All right, welcome to this View Plus Technologies webinar, talking about TSS 7 today. So we had a big group this morning, so this group's a little bit smaller. So please don't be shy and ask questions if you have questions. And there is, if you need to follow along, there is the PowerPoint and the PDF version of the presentation is in the materials folder. And there will be a recording of this session that will be emailed out to everyone that registered for the session. I guess I should introduce. I am Dan Gardner. I'm the CEO of View Plus. I forgot to do that this morning. I just realized. I assume you all know who I am. There's some intro slides that I'll go over pretty quickly because I covered most of that in the introductory webinar that's now posted on YouTube. And as well as some of the other pieces that are in here are just, I'll reference the YouTube recordings of those different things so that we have a little bit more time on the technical content, because I've been running out of time in some of these a little bit depending on the number of questions that I get. So I will try to leave some time at the end for questions, or if you're shy, you can send me email. You have my email address, was on the announcements for all these webinars and all the e-blasts, so as well as my phone number. So this is our attempt to virtually do trade shows, as we're now all trying to protect ourselves and each other. Picture of our booth in Florida, which is the last full trade show that we attended in Florida in January. We were at CSUN and had to bail out early after they closed down Disneyland and told everybody to go home. So that was, I think, Friday the 13th in March. And so we've pretty much been grounded ever since. Here at View Plus, we do have our production staff here working, building printers with more than adequate social distancing. We are definitely not like a meat packing plant. We have 40,000 square feet, I think, and like 3 people back there. So our sales and support staff are working remotely, as well as many people as can, and a lot of them already do anyway. So, but we are here answering phone calls and emails and everything else. So, but anyway, so virtual trade show. Here we go. Since we weren't able to come to Site City in Frankfurt this year, or any of the AER shows, I'm trying to take the greatest hits of the things that I've been doing either in the booth or during my various presentations at the shows. So if you have other ideas of things you'd like to see, please don't be shy about letting us know one way or the other, either now, through email, phone calls, whatever. So yeah, we're going to go over TSS 7. So sort of what is TSS 7, depending on your experience level, as well as some of the new features and things that we've learned through doing a lot of these training classes. So go over the profiles in the Word, go through some math, doing some math things within Word, graphics in Word, using the Excel plugin, and also some common uses for Tiger Designer. And I said I'll review those here. So who is View Plus? Yeah, if you haven't heard of View Plus, we are the Tiger printer people. You may say, I have a Tiger printer. Well, those actually is the name of a technology, but View Plus is the manufacturer. And so the company was founded by my parents after my father went blind. And so again, this is covered in a lot more detail in the introduction webinar. As well as, if you're here, probably because you think the tactographics are important too, or at least think that they might be. So again, pictures here of the APH snowman and the Google line art cat, and get these kind of pictures, but really just reminding that tactographics, I like braille literacy. Tactographics is a learned skill, and the earlier that someone starts, the better chance they have. If a blind student waits until high school when they're in the middle of complex science and math, might not be the right time to start trying to learn, compared to if they had access to tactographics while they were in grade school. So, plus you can have a lot of fun, and again, do a lot more in depth of what you can do with tactographics ideas in the intro webinar, as well as I have a specialized presentation workshop that I do on tactographics. So View Plus, again, we make the Tiger embossers as well as software to support them, which is why you're here today talking about Tiger software suite. We do also have audio tactile as well as graphing calculators. And in the middle of the screen here, I'm showing the Tiger box, which is our Wi-Fi module that will add on to any of our existing or current printers and allow you to print and do text to braille from your iOS or Android phone. The big news of earlier this year was the launch of the PowerDot with the Columbia and Delta version 2s, the generation 2. I spent last summer working with the machine shop around the corner to drill out the cups so that we could get as powerful a dot as we could get, really being driven by some of our partners, like Braille in particular, about the readability of our Braille dot. So really trying to match the quality of the Braille dot you get from Braille or you find on your like HIMS note taker or your Braille display. Try to get that nice, strong, high dot, but with a reasonable, with a base diameter that's within the requirements. So again, compared to the older View Plus Tiger Graphics products that had the triangular dot that were really focused on Braille, or on graphics. The Delta and Columbia, when they were launched, were focused on Braille with tactile graphics, and the big improvement from generation 1 to generation 2, again, is the size of the Braille dot. We still do emboss good quality, high resolution tactile graphics, just different from what we do on the graphics specialized machines. Okay, we're here today to talk about Tiger Software Suite, fondly known as TSS by us here. It's really three main tools in one. The Tiger add-on or add-in for Word, and Excel is your Braille translation. So it's where you define all of the things if you want to translate and combine graphics and tables and everything else into one environment. We do support obviously Duxbury and Braille Blaster and Braille 2000, but most of those are just going to let you do really just Braille, and other pieces that our printers support, they have limited or no support for ink as well as graphics. You're stuck with the Braille tables. Kind of stuck with the lowest common denominator of what's supported by the other Braille embossers, which is pretty much text only. So Tiger Designer is a standalone Windows Paint tactile paint program, very similar to what comes built in with Windows, yet you're seeing the dot representation, and it's a great way to do a quick fix up if you don't like what the printer driver created for you, or you want to do some things like label some things or remove some things or add tactile fill patterns, things like that. So we'll go into that in more detail later, but those are the three main tools. The big new things inside of TSS 7 is that we now have a 6-key or 8-key Braille entry method called QuickPaw. So if you're familiar with using a Perkins Brailler and you know exactly, you know Braille a lot better than I do, and you know exactly what you want, yeah, you can use the keys on your keyboard to simulate a Perkins Brailler and get exactly what you want without having to go through any translator messing it up. The other big thing, we completely rewrote the standalone translator. So it will run if you don't have MS Office installed. And before it was just a text to Braille clipboard translator. It still has a clipboard translator. The big new feature is that it supports back translate now. So you can, and it also supports standalone file, and actually I think this is an older screenshot. The newer version actually has, you can convert a whole directory of files. So if you have a bunch of BRF files that you want to convert back into text, either because you want to use a different, want to move from American English to English Unified, or usually not, doesn't from grade 1 to grade 2. But anyway, if you want to change something in an existing Braille document, you don't have the source anymore. It's a great way to get back to the source so that you can then retranslate and turn on interlining to see the text, things like that. So I'm sure there's lots of ways that you'll think to use this that we haven't, and again, I see people using this, and again, we'll go into this a little bit more as we talk about how to quickly insert Braille labels a little later on. So the secret to View Plus embossers is that all of our printers are printers, not just embossers, but they come with a print driver. So this is a Windows printer driver that will convert colors, the intensity of the color, to different dot heights that our printers support. So in this case, I'm showing you the PRN image of the snowman from the earlier slides, where you see the dots, the black dots are the full height lines, the light gray fill are the little gray, they're the for the fill representation. So you're seeing these are the dots exactly as they'll be printed on the paper. So again, this is something you don't have to believe me that this is how it works and this is how easy it is. If you don't have one of our printers or you don't have access to it right now at home, you can download the printer driver from our website. It's free, installs the Braille fonts, and then you can set it up to print a file so that even without a printer at home, you can get the printer output to be able to review within the Tiger Viewer, which comes free with the printer driver. Or if you have the TSS 7 either license or download the 30-day demo, you can bring it into Tiger Designer and edit it to your heart's content. So a lot of the questions we get are just around, how do I set up the Braille the way I want it? And once you do it, then you don't have to worry about it again, or maybe you have multiple different users that have different requirements, or you have different access to different printers. So again, we're going to spend some time kind of going over profiles, how you can use them, how do you set the main Braille language, how do you set the math language, what is the interlining text I keep talking about, and then how do I format the pages. I'm in Word, I've got inches and other things for, well, inches, centimeters, pixels, depending on how you set it up. I want 40 characters per line and 25 lines per page with page numbers, and I want a certain kind of indents, and I'm using 11.5 by 11 paper or whatever, right? I mean, those are all things that you come into most of the Braille embossers, and they're always giving to you, like, do you want 1 or 2 space indents? Do you want top margins of 1 Braille line and things like that? And with Word, you get to set them exactly how you want them. But if you want them to match, which I guess what I was trying to do was match what I was getting out of Duxbury or Braille Blaster. So, and then the only other weird thing is that, yeah, page numbers, we're using the Word doc, how it does page numbers. So those go down in the footer. So that was my first demo. So if you have move some of this stuff around. Let's see. Okay. So if you have a text document, in this case, it's the About View Plus, all about my dad, from our webpage. So I cut and paste the text in, and so it's in a standard Word format. How do I make this into Braille? So you have the Tiger ribbon across with all the other standard ribbons there, and the upper left corner, you have the Tiger profile settings. So you can create profiles, delete profiles, import and export profiles if you have multiple computers that you want to send someone your profile. So in this case, I have my Columbia webinar profile setting, and to open the profile settings dialog, 2 monitors is great. Okay, so there are 4 tabs when you open the profile settings dialog. So the first one's the Braille settings. The top one is the choose language setting. So we do support multiple languages of Braille. So if you open up the Braille languages that we support, you can see there's everything from Afrikaans to Ukrainian. And so you can mix those into one document. Say you're doing a thing for English and Spanish class. And so you can, by just making a different font to differentiate the languages, you can have in one pass have TSS translate to the different languages, but we're not focusing on that aspect. All of these gory details of all the things you can do are supported in the Web Clinic series on YouTube, which has that's about 90 minutes of different. There's 6 different classes and going into Word, Excel, Tiger Designer, some advanced Tiger Designer, math type. Anyway, so there's anything that I'm glossing over is in the manual or is on YouTube. So in this case, we're going to use English Unified, which is our UEB, which is English Unified. I'm going to use grade 2 contractions, and I only have one language, so I'm going to translate the whole thing. I am going to be demonstrating using later math, and I want that to be represented with Nemeth. And so that's something too, so here I can choose the various math languages. So it goes straight to the UEB math or Nemeth. So right now I'm following the BANA guidelines to insert Nemeth start and stop blocks and putting the math inside of Nemeth. The ink settings, well, in the Columbia I don't have ink, so I'm not going to have it turned off. But if I switch over to the Spot Dot or the Elite or Premier with InkConnect, I can turn on ink, which will then put the original text into text boxes, and I will demonstrate that in a minute. Page layout, this is again where you can set up the paper size. This is the formatting for the Braille document, so it'll pretty much reformat based. You don't have to do all this formatting from the original Word document. Just tell us what size paper you're going to be using, and then I've kind of tuned the margins away from the sort of default half-inch margins to give it so that it fits that 40 characters per line with a 3/4 inch margin, and 25 lines per page with a top margin of 0.5 and a bottom margin of 0.5. So that's why those are tuned that way. Also inside of the advanced section here, I was trying to match the 2-space sort of default that Braille Blaster and Duxbury seem to use for the 3:1 Braille formatting, as they call it. So here you can either use whatever Word had in the original document or just override it and enter new paragraphs with 2 spaces or however many spaces you want to set. So that was kind of it's sort of going fast, but if you have questions, let me know. But that's really seems to be if you set all this stuff in your page document, in your page layout, this is going to be what your Braille document looks like. And so you don't have to worry about doing it all inside of Word. On document settings, I'm not using headers, so I'm removing headers, but I am using footers because I'm using page numbers in this case. And Word uses the footer for the page number, so I have to translate the footer. And you have some different options here for whether you want the original page numbers to show up, and then also for some users, especially early learning, like to have some space between the Braille lines to help. And so here you can also set the Braille line spacing from the default single space to 1.5 or double spaced things. Also, if you're using interlining, sometimes that's nice too, to have a nice clean space. There's usually enough room for like the 14 font to pretty much fit between, but if you want it to be completely clean and not printing over any of the dots, then you can increase the spacing. So most of the time you have maybe a few profiles depending on what printers you have access to or what the requirements of certain students are. I've seen different teachers name the profiles by the student or by the printer or whatever, right? It just depends on, you can have as many as you want, but that's really the point, is you have a handful of them and then you can quickly just switch. So from this standard formatted, or default formatted Word document, I just, with those settings for the Columbia, I just hit translate document and it will translate the document. So I did have page numbers on. It doesn't insert the number sign in there. I'm not sure if I need to add some enhancement, but if you insert the number sign in the footer on the first page, it copies through to all of the pages. So, but otherwise, and if you read Braille as poorly as I do, even the dot representations, if you do prefer to use ASCII, you can toggle the ASCII settings right here to then show up as ASCII Braille. So Again, just depends. It's still kind of gobbledygook since it's grade 2 contractions, but you get a better idea of kind of what it looks like, just depending on, if you know what dot representations, you can do a lot of different things. But if you're more of a novice like me, then sometimes it helps just to see the letters. So that's the basics of profiles. The the nice thing is, so if I decide, oh, okay, I want the same document, but now I want to use it, I want to reload the original document and reload. So I reload the original document, and I want to target now to a spot dot, which spot dot has the color ink. So I want to turn on the interlining, and also it only takes letter size or A4 paper. So again, it needs to be, I can't just take that other Braille document and reprint it on there. It won't give me everything that I want, but I just changed the profile to my spot dot webinar 1, which now is set to the wrong. So if I set to the same settings, but I turn on the ink settings and the paper layout, and is now trying to do, I think it was 27 was the recommended 27 characters line and the same number of lines. So now if I hit translate, it'll take a little longer because it's going to redraw the text boxes, but it will then add in the interline text as well as the Braille. Twin windows open. Okay, so same Braille result, but reformatted for the letter size, and then you'll see the text boxes with all of the interline, or with the interline text with it in the 14-point font, slightly above the Braille. And if you want to get a better representation of what this is actually going to look like on the paper, I have already printed these to file, which is just going up and hitting print, and then I have printers installed for each one of them to file. So on the Columbia, in Tiger Viewer or Tiger Designer, you'll see a bunch of blue dots. The blue dots signify the Braille dot height inside of Tiger Designer. And the page numbers are there fitting onto the page. And if you want to double check the inner point view, you can switch that, since I am using double-sided printing on this printer. So you can see how the inner point and the page 2 showing up on the back side of this printout goes. And if you flip to the next if you switch to page 2, you'll see the opposite. You'll see what page 2 looks like with where the inner point is laid out on the front page. So again, get a pretty good view of what exactly is going to end up on the paper before you waste any paper. And then same thing if I open up the spot.prn, it will include the ink page as well as the Braille page. And again, I don't have inner point on this printer, but I can look at the combined view of the ink plus the Braille to see what will happen. My page number is fitting on the page. The ink isn't getting truncated due to a limited bottom margin for ink. So I had played around with a little bit, and same thing. Go to page 2, and same thing. So you can see how it fits. Actually, I think there's even a page 3. Yep. So, and again, you can separate those into just the ink view and the Braille view, or you can combine them. So get a very good idea of what it's going to look like. And same thing, I use the Elite with InkConnect. It's very similar, except for it's laying it out on a 11.5 by 11 paper. And you see the reason why we chose the 14-point font is on the ink single-sided by default on the Elite or the Premier. So you're going to have 2 columns of text on the front of the page, but you're going to have the Braille is double-sided on that printer. So again, you can get it. Broken record. If you don't want to waste paper, use print to file first. So that is, oh, I closed it too quickly. So the other piece that I learned is just I think the default header spacing, if you haven't used headers much in Word, is like around ½ an inch or something. So if you're trying to use a tighter top margin and you're getting pushed down, you can't figure out why. Sometimes it's the header that's showing through, because even if you tell it to delete them, Word doesn't really ever listen to what you say. Anyway, and then the footer, playing with the footer margin, depending on whether you're using ink or not, there's some margin requirements to get the ink on the page, and you want to make sure that the braille fits on the page, things like that. So I found that like a 0.7 inch margin was kind of universal, worked well with all the document types that I tried, to where I didn't lose part of the ink, or it didn't have it falling off, the braille falling off part of the page because it's getting too close to the bottom margin. Anyway, so that was just kind of, again, using what Word has and setting up page numbers inside of Word. That covers profiles. So other big questions always come around with math. And so again, we're using a math type plugin or add-in to identify the math equations. And so kind of knowing the strengths of what that does or doesn't do, and really depends on what you're doing, where the math's coming from. So there's a lot of different tools. Like during the intro one, I showed MathPix plugin, where you can go and use like a math snipping OCR tool and to grab equations, and it will insert those, have the copies of the MathML or the image after you snip them out and put those in. Those will paste right into math type to get you a nice equation inside of Word that we can then translate. So in this case, I was trying to show something a little different. So I found some MathML examples from this w3.org. And so, again, doing a similar example. So finding the quadratic equation. This is just a snippet. So that's like the in row and markup part. So it's missing the start and stop MathML tags. But if you add the open, whatever, bracket math and close math. So even something just raw from a web page, so different ways, there's lots of different ways to get this quadratic equation in, whether you find the MathML somewhere. And so this is already done as a word, as a math type equation. So math type just shows up as a plugin, and you can choose the inline option. And where does it put where's my math box? Here we go. The choice of multiple monitors. So this MathML will paste directly into the inline equation and create a nice one. If you forget to put in math type, or you don't have math type, it will end up, well, actually math type will recognize it. So yeah, so exact duplicate of what I had. It's a math type object that shows you double click or double tap in to open up math type equation editor. Same thing. If you try to paste the MathML directly in and you have math type installed, it's going to tell you it recognizes the MathML and it's going to create a math type equation for you. I found that like the convert equations and the automatic paste option doesn't work as well. I'll try it again. So you end up getting these weird periods a lot of times where you convert the Microsoft OML type equations over. So because a lot of things come in from other sources. So again, depending on the source of your math, there's some tips and tricks. I mean, usually it's the quickest just to open them up and bring them into math type and resave them. Because as I played around with, as I was playing with things like MathPix, I showed in the intro, that one's really, really slick to grab stuff from lots of sources if you don't want to type it all in. Also, we'll do handwritten, but there's lots of other ways. So there's other tools like Pandoc will convert from almost anything to almost anything, and it will bring in. So if you have MathML embedded into a text, it'll create a Word document with the Microsoft equations in it, and you can then open them up and convert them over. I've done some hacking around to get scientific notebook exports to work. Not too bad there. The images, anyway. And Infy is another sort of takes a scan of an entire textbook, math textbook page, and can create the equations. And again, you get a PDF or a Word doc out of it, and you can get that converted in. So the big thing I really want to show is that now when you're using UEB with Nemeth, we're following the BANA guidelines for using the Nemeth block start and stop. Those will get automatically inserted around the math object. So to go back to my Word document, get rid of these extra equations. So again, I have my Tigers profile set up for the Columbia to use Nemeth. So if I translate the document, oh, and I'm not, yeah, if you know the ASCII, there's the start and stop Nemeth blocks. Let's switch to the braille dots. Always fun doing live demos. Let's see. All it's doing is so then this matches, so you have the start and stop Nemeth blocks around the equation. So exactly, again, what we're told to do by BANA. If it's wrong, yell at them. So the other thing that I showed early in the intro webinar was the Desmos calculator, because that's a lot of times, just getting math equations isn't as helpful as getting the plots of them. And Desmos has been doing a lot of work to support accessibility within the online calculator. And since it's a really nice free calculator that's built into the HIMSS note takers, as well as a lot of the standardized testing, so it's a mainstream tool, as well as something that has some great accessibility features for sonification and other pieces. And they keep working on their plotting or their ability to print for us, for an embosser. So they've always had the ability to, if you do the share and export your image, and if you choose to go to a Tactographics embosser, so they did support a PNG output, but it ended up being like really small and kind of grainy, and the text is embedded in the PNG, so it doesn't really print as Braille like it should anyway. So we kept asking us, well, we just support print. Why don't you give us a better layout, something better than PNG? And they said, well, what do you want? I said, we really want SVG. So with SVG, you can just use the medium square default. You want to thicken the lines a little bit. But now that if you the little up arrow on the share now has the beta SVG feature. And so even since last week, they fixed these Braille, the labels, or the labels weren't coming through before. Now they're coming through. Everything's in the SVG as text, and also that means that SVG is much more editable and will print much better than it will. They still don't have the ability to insert the Braille text in here yet, but if you with any kind of SVG type editor, like a free Inkscape or something else, it's not necessarily easy to always find all this buried text labels, but at least you can move stuff around, you can delete stuff, you can convert it to Braille, but they're working on getting that more automated. But again, this prints out really well as long as you don't want any Braille labels on there, but at least you can get the shapes and the dots there. But my starting point for my math stuff in the intro was really trying to know what you want to plot or how to plot an equation, what it's supposed to look like. It's much easier to start with something inside of a nice online calculator to figure out what the parabola. Oh yeah, I'm trying to show where it crosses the x-axis. That's the solutions to the quadratic equation that I'm trying to plot. they have everything from linear algebra examples of slope intercept, point slope, all the different standards for linear algebra, trig, uh, polar and conic, as well as uh, calculus, derivatives, integrals, those kind of things. So math covering the whole spectrum uh, of things, because yes, with most of the online calculators, I can never get it exactly the way I want it. I can't get the axes out of the way, but it's nice to know what the plot's supposed to look like, because then I can then go over to, which I'm going to show next, going into Excel, I have complete control over it, but you have to really know what you're doing inside of Excel to get something that prints out well, and make sure your equation's correct. Um, so I found no way to automatically transform equations into Excel equations. If you know something, let me know. But I so end up having to rewrite the equations in Excel, which again, if you have no other way to get the plots the way you want, then that's. But first off, the next thing I'm going to actually show before we jump into math and Excel is just doing graphics in Word. So it came up at the Midwestern Braille Conference in, I don't remember where it was. Anyway, somewhere in the Midwest. They gave me a challenge. They had some like 5 or 6 different commonly requested graphics that they wanted to have. And so I gave myself 90 seconds to see if I could create each one. So the one that we actually documented is up on YouTube is the thermometer one. So again, it's starting off with using the power of Word. So insert an online picture. There's a ton of stuff. It used to be called clip art. Now it's this stuff, but you can type in thermometer and you see there's a whole bunch of different choices, and you can choose one that fits your needs. So in this case, somewhere down here, somewhere down there somewhere, there's the one that has the both Fahrenheit and Celsius on it. So I chose that one. Resolution isn't that great, but I'm actually going to override. This was just for the Columbia, so I wasn't going to use the ink anyway. So in this case, with the labels, this is where all the choices come in. How do you want to create those? Do you want to, take one piece at a time into the clipboard and cut and paste them back in separate text boxes? Do I just want to type them in ASCII Braille font? Do I want to, use the Perkins keyboard type thing and use QuickPaw? Or in this case, because of the symmetry between the two, I didn't want to do a whole bunch of individual text boxes and try to get them all to perfectly line up. So what I ended up doing was creating a sheet of all the text I wanted to label. So the 100 degrees to 0 degrees Celsius, and then 32 to 212 Fahrenheit, and just translate that document. So I have the Braille characters in 2 blocks, and then I just cut and pasted these blocks back into that Word document, and then played with the paragraph spacing so that I could. So I insert them into a text box with paragraph spacing, and end up with Braille that is spaced perfectly to line up with the hash marks. So it's just a matter of playing with this paragraph spacing to get it exactly what I wanted. So 8 point with 1.08 spacing. So that again, something that accomplished my goal of getting it done in 90 seconds. And again, we show, I think the video is right around that too on YouTube, showing you the exact step-by-step take of it. So starting point, yeah, is finding good graphics depending on the skill of the person that you're producing the graphics for, or for yourself. I don't know how on Google filters, when you use Google search, they have a filter for doing line art, which is usually a really good starting spot to find something that is actually can tell what it is. Uh, getting something that has too much color in it, it may just look like a blob. But that's again why I also print a file is helpful before you put it to paper, to see what it looks like. Okay, so we also have an add-in for Excel. It does translation. So again, this is a representation in a Braille font, so you can move for the plot. You can move the axes labels outside of the plot area, which seems to be something almost impossible to do in most of the online calculators. They always want to put the numbers right through the middle of the thing and screw up all the data. You can also do call outs to certain specific points. And again, those will then get brailled into that, as well as then the equation equation that actually I cut and pasted from the Word document translation. So really, I think that one of the most common things I use Excel for is just creating tables, because again, you have all the auto continue type features, the sum and average things. So if you're doing test scores or whatever, it's really easy to do tables, cut and paste that table back into Word. You can set the grid lines to some nice low dot height, like a gray instead of the full height black, and then it doesn't get in the way of the data inside the table. But it's a really easy way to drop something back into original Word document and then hit translate on the whole document, and it will translate and formulate the table to fit the layout of the page that you have chosen. So I use that all the time. It's just Excel table to Word. And then for this math plotting stuff that I did, to get exactly what I want, plotting inside of Excel, and then playing around with what kind of fill for pie charts and those kind of things. How does that work? How do I add the line, mark the right markers and change the colors? Luckily, tons of people use Excel. There's tons of stuff you can Google and watch on YouTube on how to use Excel. And let's see, show you what I had done. So first, the most complicated part of this whole part was figuring out what I wanted to show. And so when people were telling me that they wanted to see parabolas, and I'm like, what are parabolas? Oh, quadratic equations. Okay. So writing the quadratic equation for the X and Y solution wasn't too complicated. You can do it by a formula, so that you could do it once. But then in order to plot something in Excel, they don't have it's not a graphing calculator. So you have to have the sort of, I guess, X values as well as the solution values in a table format. And once you get that, then you can set up a plot of those characteristics. And it does a pretty good job of centering things, and you can move the axes wherever you want, do label callouts and all those other things. And once you kind of get something that works, and it works across a whole set, for this one, I ended up doing different tables just for illustration purposes, but you can actually have the formula kind of auto-fill. It was just setting the X range was a little challenging. I didn't spend a lot of time automating it. So it was just easier to eyeball it and get something that I wanted close. But that's, again, where it helped to have an online calculator or something to see what it was going to kind of look like, and then I could tune it. Once you get something that you like, to just copy it down to its own sheet. And so this is just a copy of that exact plot, and then hitting translate in the Tiger tab, hitting translate document will create a Braille representation. So it will convert both the number callouts will then be in a Braille font, as well as the axes title labels and the title. So it's right now showing in ASCII Braille because that's my preference, but you can switch it if you want. So again, this is something that you can do. It will also work for our combined ink and Braille printers as well, where it creates the ink page as well as the Braille page. So again, you can print directly from Excel to get a plot that looks exactly like this, and will be laid out for the paper type that you have chosen as well. So getting good looking graphics from Excel, I think the biggest stumbling block is learning how to do them in Excel, not getting the Braille and everything else onto them. So again, coming back, this is sort of another Excel example, but it's a good example of a common use of Tiger Designer as a fix-up tool. So if I have my pie chart example, and I have my Braille and ink sheets, And so this is a prettier looking one because it's got some color for a spot dot here. Or in this case, I think I laid it out for both the spot dot or the InkConnect. But if you notice on the braille, it looks like a different color. It's a, you have a blackish color, you have a lighter one, and then you have a kind of mid-range one. And you're not really sure what it's going to look like until you look at it in, say, Tiger Designer. So if I pull that over with the Elite layout on 11 by, I think, 14 paper, they look like different colors. If I look at the tactile image, yeah, but maybe they aren't enough. I mean, again, this is something, maybe I want to take this mid color and make it stand out a little bit more. So I can use the pattern fill tool, and which I turn on and click here, and it will by default choose the hatch, hatched one. There's different, there's four different built-in patterns, and you can also create your own with the pattern editor. So the other pattern is a sort of same thing but rotated, so let's say you have a diagonal one versus the XY one pattern. So depending what you have, there's some funkier looking ones too. With these ones, may not always work well. Checkerboard type pattern, depending on how big the area is, but you can see it here and pretty straightforward to play with it, and you can go in and edit those and make your own patterns. It's also great, like, oh, I didn't want this box around the whole thing that Excel automatically puts in there. So if I can just get rid of those now, rather than have to go back and figure out how to do that in Excel. So I can just remove whatever I want inside there. Or if I want to assign my work, I can add in braille into this document too. So it already had braille in it, but I can add braille on there and label it. So also, if I wanted to match the horizontal vertical versus inverse vertical, right? So you can do whatever you need to do braille labeling and things like that here as well. And this is, again, an exact dot representation. So if I want to draw a square with a filled square with the lowest dot height, I can do that right here. If I want to use, if I even want to draw a square with the braille dot height, I can do that too. It'll let you. Maybe it won't let me do that more. I used to. Not smarter. Anyway, so you can figure out how to do squares, circles, different shapes, or draw with different lines at any dot height that you want. So it's, again, if you wanted to highlight and add lines around things too, to highlight things, you can add whatever you want inside here and save this and then send it to the printer. So the most common uses of Tiger Designer: adding braille labels, adding pattern fill, and then just cleaning up things you don't like that the printer ever did for you. So how does this work? Again, if I want to see what that Excel plots look like on a spot dot, so I have an ink and tactile image. Again, that exact thing with the callouts. Here is the ink layer. Here is the tactile layer. So you'll see the braille dots are now braille dots, and you can look at the combined view to see how they line up together, and so then you get a really good idea of what it's going to look like when you print it on the printer itself. Versus like the thermometer idea, Columbia only has tactile, so you'll see just the tactile image here. But something like the Elite that has the black grayscale type of fill on the ink layer combined with the tactile layer. Again, if I want to see what they look like, use the combined view, and there you go. So again, pretty good idea of what it's going to look like, and do any fix up before printing. So the other thing, I do a lot of stuff too, just because the Delta is a cut sheet printer, so it's really easy to find lots of different sizes of paper and different thicknesses of paper, and you can run them through a standard laser printer. So the Delta has a stack feeder, the Max and the Braille have single sheet feeds. So again, you can do a lot of cool creative things with and you know, HP LaserJet or inkjet or whatever printer you have laying around, and do a 2-pass ink and emboss type of stuff. Or just if you want to have the interline text on there and you don't have our Spot Dot or Elite Premier with InkConnect. Already talked a little bit about back translate. I think the other advantage of using the fact that we're based on Word is that it makes it really easy to do labels. You can buy Braille label stock, both cut sheet as well as there's some tractor feed stuff available from American Thermoform, as well as I think APH, and in Europe I think it's Blista. Anyway, you can buy labels, you can lay them out in Word and print them. I mean, we're even using like a raised QR code where we print the QR code on the Braille label on the laser printer and then draw a square around it, you know, put the grid line around it and print that on the Mac so that we can get really nice ink, you know, a tactile ridge around a QR code so that you can find it and aim your phone at it. And so that's something, yeah, that we've been doing, using this combination of printing on an ink printer and then printing on one of the cut sheet printers. Business cards is another one that comes up all the time. I mean, you can print directly on Avery card stock. I also find it really convenient to, again, use those Braille labels and lay out the text that I want into a label format and print a whole sheet of them and cut them on the paper cutter, because the plastic labels stand up really well. Stick them on the back of my business card and throw them in a backpack, and they don't get crushed, versus printing on just the cardstock sort of Braille label or business card labels. Doesn't always work. Well, it doesn't always hold up super well. You have to be a little bit more careful with them. So I've been throwing around, again, a lot of the marketing stuff and overview of all the printers was on the original presentation. So this is kind of giving, this is available on our website as well, just a grid of all the different kind of printers that we have, from the personal embosser, the Braille, the color Spot Dot, the cult favorite of the Max, the Elite Premiers are production printers, and then the Columbia 2 and Delta 2. So again, that's our complete lineup that we have right now, as well as some of the relevant specifications, and that's all on the website. So if you do want to see any of these things, yes, we do offer free samples. Click on our website and get a free sample pack sent to you. Choose which printers or all the printers that you want to see. Also, if you do, you know, download a 30-day trial of TSS, you can create your own PRN files. So follow the YouTube video for setting up a print to file with the printer. Create some PRN files. You want to see what they look like on a printer, you don't have access to one, send it to me. We'll send you we'll print out the PRN for you. Larger volume, we're still working on figuring out how we would do pricing and things for actual print on demand, but if you have some things that you just want to see, please feel free to send stuff to us. All right, so we've got about 6 minutes left. You've been a very quiet audience. Hopefully you're still awake. Anything that I went over too quickly, want me to go back and look at again? Or what else would you like to see next time? Still looking for some cool challenges to show. You know, let me know.